There are a lot of myths about mental illness, and people with mental health conditions have to deal with the stigmas that come with them. People have wrong ideas about mental illness because they don't know what it really is. People can get mental illnesses just like they can get cancer or diabetes. In spite of what most people think, people with mental health conditions cannot control their illness. Find out more myths and facts about mental illness to help break the stigma and raise awareness. But before we start the countdown, it would be great if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon. Myth number 1. Mental illness can't affect me. 1 in 5 people in the United States will have a mental illness in any given year, according to statistics. About 1 in 25 people will have a serious mental illness that makes it hard for them to do one or more of their most important things in life. There are some groups that are more likely to have a mental illness than others, but anyone can get one. Mental health disorders can happen to anyone, from a homeless person to a stockbroker on Wall Street. People think they will never have a mental disorder because they don't realize that mental health conditions are real illnesses. They tend to think that they can only get a mental illness if they let it happen on purpose. People with mental health problems can control how they are treated and how they deal with their illness, but they can't control whether or not they get sick in the first place. Myth number 2. Mental health disorders aren't real illnesses. Many people have questions about mental illness, like, is mental illness a disability? Or, is mental illness a medical condition? Is mental illness real? And so on. People who question whether mental illness is real don't realize that mental disorders are medical conditions that can be diagnosed. Mental health disorders can have a big effect on a person's well-being, even if they don't show up in their bodies. There are many things that can lead to mental illness, but genetics and chemical imbalances play a big role. Brain scans of some people with mental disorders show that some parts of the brain are shaped or sized differently than in most people. There are physical problems in the brain that can change the way a person thinks, which is a common symptom of mental illness. Myth number 3. Bad parenting causes mental illness. Even though parenting doesn't have much of an effect on mental illness, there are still some small ways that it could happen. This shouldn't come as a surprise, since being a parent changes how people see themselves and the world. There are 2 main things that can put a child at risk for mental illness that parents can do something about. Severe trauma. If a parent regularly hurts their child physically or emotionally, making them feel unsafe and unloved, that child is more likely to develop a mental illness as an adult. Abuse of drugs or alcohol. The second way parents can affect a child's chance of getting a mental illness is by letting them use drugs or alcohol without being responsible. Using drugs when you're young can make you more likely to get a mental illness later on. Even though the above risk factors may be affected by how parents raise their children, this does not mean that their children will develop mental health disorders. Myth number 4. People with mental health issues are dangerous. One common misconception about people with mental illnesses is that they are dangerous. Many people think that violence and mental illness go hand in hand. There are some types of mental illness that make people more likely to act violently, but in most cases, having a mental illness doesn't make a person more likely to be dangerous. The Harvard School of Medicine cited a study that showed only 18% of people with mental illness were likely to do something violent. The other 82% of those with mental illness were not. People often think there is a link between mental illness and violence because they don't know much about mental health conditions or don't understand them. Mental illness often changes the way people think and may change the way they act, but it doesn't usually make them more violent. Myth number 5. Mental illness is just an excuse for poor behavior. People who don't believe in mental illness often think that any bad things a person with mental illness does are on purpose. They think that the person who is sick should be able to control what they think and do. Chemical or structural changes in the brain that happen when a person has a mental illness actually change the way that person can think and reason. Many people don't know what it's like to live with mental illness because they don't have it themselves. Depending on the type of mental illness, some people may be able to control some of their behaviors. However, many people are not able to control all of their behaviors. Myth number 6. Mental illness is a sign of weakness. Many people who don't have mental health problems think that having a mental health problem means that a person is weak. Part of the reason for this is that mental illness can't be seen or diagnosed easily. People tend to think that this means mental illness is caused by not being able to deal with the normal stresses of life. In reality, the chemical or structural changes in the brain that come with mental illness can make it harder for a person to deal with more stress. Mental illness has a very unique kind of shame attached to it. It would be very rude to tell someone who has been diagnosed with brain cancer that they got sick because they were weak or couldn't handle life's stresses. But for some reason, saying the same thing about mental illness is not only okay, but most people think it is true. Even though public education is getting better at teaching people about mental illness, there is still a lot of work to be done to get rid of this stigma. Myth number 7. Children don't develop mental health conditions. Between the ages of 8 and 15, about 13% of children will get a mental health condition or have one. Children with mental health problems often show up in different ways than adults do. So, behavior problems can be used to explain away mental health issues in children. Children can get clinical depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses, which is sad. There are a lot of mental health conditions that can lead to behavior problems, so it can be hard to tell which kinds of bad behavior are normal for kids and which ones are signs of a mental illness. If a parent thinks their child might have a mental illness, they should talk to a psychiatrist to see if their child is acting normally. Even though children don't have as many mental health problems as adults, they can still have them. Myth number 8. Individuals with mental health problems can't work. People with mental illnesses often get the impression that they are not useful and can't hold jobs or do their jobs well. But having a mental illness doesn't make it less likely that someone will be able to do well in life. Even though some mental illnesses can cause severe problems, most of them can be treated with therapy and medicine. Most people are surprised to learn that several of their friends, coworkers, or family members have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder and are getting treatment for it. Mental illness is very common, but many people who have it don't talk about it openly because of the stigma. Myth number 9. People with mental health disorders lack intelligence. People often think wrongly that there is a link between mental health and intelligence, but this is usually not the case. People with mental illnesses often change how they act or how they see the world or their lives. This doesn't change their ability to think and make good decisions. People with mental illnesses are often called disturbed, or not right in the head, because of the way people think about them. Because of these descriptions, some people think that mental illness means a person is less smart, even though this is not true. Myth number 10. Recovery from mental illness is impossible. People who have just been told they have a mental illness will wonder if they can get better. As healthcare and knowledge about mental illness have improved, recovery has gone from being a distant goal to a real possibility. But even if a person with a mental illness never fully recovers, treatment can help them deal with their symptoms and have a much better quality of life. Getting better starts with getting a diagnosis and realizing that you have a mental illness. The first treatment will focus on getting rid of the worst symptoms and giving the person back control over the things they used to be able to do. The next steps will be about taking one step at a time to reach goals. So, that's it for today. We hope you enjoy the video. Tell us what you think about the video in the comments section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to get all the latest updates.